one more in the offing. I think yesterday was an aberration when we didn't have an IPO actually opening on the street, and that could explain why the secondary markets did as well as they did. But this one's an interesting one, not a very large one, an interesting industry, not your typical sort of company in that sense. Quick details on Western Carrier's IPO. This IPO opens for retail subscription today, which is 13th of September, and closes on the 18th of September. The company is looking to raise 492 crores. The price band of this issue is in the range of 163 to 172 rupees per piece. The anchor book investors managed to do quite well. The anchor book investor has included names such as Kotak, Motilal, Aditya Birla Sun Life, amongst many others that participated in the offering. Let's remember that this is one of the few IPOs that haven't got too much international subscription in that sense in the anchor book. They did successfully raise 148 crores from their anchor investors. Now, why is Western Carriers looking to raise funds? The first thing that they're looking to do is, remember, repay or early repayment rather of the debt that they owe. Capital expenditure may be required as well because they've got very aggressive plans, and one way for them to grow and increase market share is by going out and making acquisitions and growing inorganically. They're also talking about purchasing commercial vehicles, a 40 feet specialized container and a 20 feet normal shipping containers and reach stackers. So that's what the objective of this issue is. Now let's tell you what Western Carriers does in a nutshell. The company, like Neeraj said, is one of India's largest private multi-modal, rail-focused, 4PL, asset-light logistics firm. In terms of container volumes handled or operated by Western Carriers, it controls about 4 to 6% of the market share as of FY23. Well, 2 to 6% of the market share. The company also provides chartering services to overseas destinations. They also provide stevedoring services at the ports and the coastal movement of cargo across the country. So they do a lot. They're largely in the business of logistics, which is, remember, a rather fragmented one, at least right now. But if India does aim and urge to become a destination in terms of, a hub of the world, logistics will play a very, very significant role, and hence Western Carriers IPO becomes an interesting one from that point of view. Well, let's tell you what the outlook for the company is. They have seen they've seen decent, rather healthy volume growth in the last financial year. So there's been an uptick, but let's not forget the year before that, they actually lost volumes and saw a decline. So you want to keep that in mind, and the volume growth last year came largely on back of an acquisition that the company made. They do look to increasing volumes as we go along in the next 2 to 5 years by increasing the number of opportunities that they come across. Also, favorable government initiatives such as the GSNMP, the National Logistics Policy, the National Rail Plan, and the dedicated freight corridor will support the expansion efforts. They have a large number of clients, about 1,647 clients is what Western Carrier has. A couple of risks that you want to keep in mind. The company depends, so while they have 1,600 odd clients, they depend largely on the top 10 clients, and hence there is that key consumer or customer risk in their case. They also service an industry which is largely FMCG, so if there are any changes in that sector, their financials will be impacted. They don't really have much of an ability to pass on costs, and hence any sort of disturbance in logistics input costs like raw materials like crude could impact the financials of the company. They also have a significantly high number of working capital requirement days, and an inability to meet any of those could reflect badly. What we had noticed that in the last year, the finance cost also was quite high, which, as expected on back of repayment of the debt that they're planning to do post raising these funds, will have a direct impact on a reduction in financial costs and better operational performances. So all in all, it's an interesting player. It's a rather diversified clientele. Even though the top 10 clients contribute a big chunk of their top line, the industry as well is full of many small unorganized players on one hand. On the other hand, they have the big daddies who have economies of scale. So this is somewhere placed in the middle, but I guess the promise of growth is what keeps this one going, Neeraj.